Ubloo Part 2. This is part 2 of the Ubloo series. The next two parts I'll read will be in the next couple days. That's my baby! No, please, God, no! I said, back up. I said, back up, you idiot, the policeman bugled Miss Jenkins across the mouth with his billy club with a sickening thwack. I heard her cry out from the hit and watched as her teeth flew from her mouth to the pavement, clattering at the feet of the armed police officers. They were all striking her now. They beat her down to her hands and knees, and were all taking turns hammering at her back with their clubs. She was still begging them not to take her son away, but they couldn't hear. They were laughing in a sick and emotional tone that made my stomach turn. Now the emergency medical responders emerged from the apartment building, wheeling Andrew out on a groomie. They pushed him clumsily down the stairs. His arm emerged from beneath the white sheet as he bounced down the first step. I watched his lifeless body bounce on the gurney until he landed awkwardly and fell off it completely, the white sheet blowing away in the wind and revealing his corpse. Oh, well, by all means, you dumb junkie, just help yourself to a nap while we're trying to do our frickin' jobs. With the last word, the EMT kicked Andrew's body in the stomach. I watched his body jerk and fold from the impact. The other EMT was joking and how to, both of them kicking and stomping at Andrew's lifeless corpse. I tried to yell, I tried to scream at them to stop, but while I felt my vocal cords vibrate in my chest, not a sound came out. I watched as one EMT picked up a heavy rock from a nearby floorboard and crammed it over to where Andrew's body lay. The other EMT rolled him onto his back, and I let out a scream no one would ever hear as I watched the rock slam down into Andrew's face. I heard a deep crunch and knew his skull had cracked. His head rolled to the side and faced right at me, bleeding and crushed. Then I saw his eyes open through big green eyes surrounded by a bloodshot white. "The end is the beginning, doctor," he said to me with his jaw half attached. "The end is the beginning." And then I heard him say it soft yet loud, small yet commanding, sharp as a knife yet smooth as water. Ubloo. I sat up from my bed, panting and covered in sweat. I researched frantically in the dark at the bedding next to me until my hands gripped my flashlight. I turned it on and shined it around the room, darting from one corner to the other, looking for something, anything. But the time was nothing there, nothing except for the stacks of boxes that littered my hotel room. I turned my nightstand light on and checked the time. 4:12 a.m. 3 hours of sleep would have to do. I pulled open the nightstand drawer and grabbed the pill bottle from inside. It was half full. I would need to write myself a new subscription soon, which could have come at a better time because it was looking like it was just about time to move again. I opened the bottle and threw 2 Adderall into my mouth. I grabbed a glass of water I left out for myself and drank half of it. I was going to have to start packing now if I wanted to make good time finding a new hotel. I stood up and stretched my legs and back. Now that I practically running on drugs and minimum sleep, I could not feel my body falling apart. I walked over to the dresser and twisted the cap off of the bottle of gin from the night before. I took a long swig and choked at the taste. I was never really a big fan of gin, but it's the easiest to control on your breath. With I turned to get straight packing, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and froze. My eyes sat above 2 dark, heavy bags and were so bloodshot they almost looked red. My hair stuck up every which way in dark, squiggly tufts. I had a dark shadow of hair on my chest bones and neck that made my once tightly kept beard look unattached. Jesus, I said with a pause. How the heck did I get to this? 6 weeks prior, the funeral of Andrew Jenkins came and went, and I didn't attend it. Part of me says it's because I just couldn't bear to face Miss Jenkins. Part of me says it's because I'm terrified of Andrew himself. The week leading up to the funeral, I couldn't hardly focus on my work. I just kept thinking of what I heard that night before I fell asleep. After another week, I chalked it up to just the booze and my imagination getting the best of me. Besides, I wasn't even asleep when it happened, so I couldn't have jumped. I decided that I was going to see Miss Jenkins to give myself closure. Her office wasn't far from mine for someone who owns half the apartment complexes in Middlesex country, and I decided that I deserved a day off after I went through. When I wasn't to see Miss Jenkins, it was a cool spring day. I was nervous, very nervous, in med school before I had to give a big presentation. I would ease my tension with a shot or two. To loosen up, I did the same thing, moving, but I guess I should have eaten a bigger breakfast because the time I got out of my car at her office building, my head was swimming. Inside the lobby was a cute young receptionist. I asked her where I could find Mrs. Jenkins. She told me floor 3, suite 1. Very politely, I got in the elevator with another man and we rode up together. While we stood there, I heard him sniff the air twice, then look sideways at me in the corner of his eyes. Frig, he must be able to smell the booze. When I got off at the third floor, I found a water fountain and drank a few gulps. I pulled another piece of gum from my pocket and chewed it for a minute before I knocked on Miss Jenkins' door. The door swung open and her eyes met me, and almost intuitively I saw them fall to well up. "Oh, Dr. A," she said, sounding unsurprised. "Please come in." She stepped in to the side and let me walk into her office. I immediately noticed that she was in the process of picking her things, and the office was practically bare, save for a few papers and her computer. "Moving out, eh?" I said to her, with a half smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Yes," she said, shifting her eyes from me to look around the room as she spoke. "I found someone who's going to buy all my profit. Normally it would be too much, but I gave the great price. I'm going to travel and see Europe, like myself and Robert always wanted to." "Well, that sounds exciting," I said, a little too enthusiastically. I saw the sadness creep up on Mrs. Jenkins and continued on, changing the subject. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm terribly sorry to hear about Andrew. He was a very bright young man. This brought on the waterworks." "He was," she sobbed, "and I want to thank you, doctor. The day when he left your office, he called me and told me he felt better than he had in years. Thank you for giving me that one moment of having my son back before I lost him for good." She started to cry. I looked around her office nervously, and my eyes found a photograph of a young Miss Jenkins standing next to a tall, broad-shouldered man with a big smile, and a young, handsome Andrew at his side sat a golden retriever, who must have been Buster. I remember the dream Andrew told me about him and shrugged. I walked over to the photograph, picked it up of its box. "This must be Robert, no?" I asked. She looked up, sobbing, and saw the photograph in my hands. "Oh, yes," she answered, as she walked over. "That's my Robert there. Lord, he was handsome. And of course, there's Andrew and his dog Buster." Chilling up my spine as she said his name. Something told me Miss Jenkins knew very little of it, nothing about the dreams her son was having. I looked down at the box I took the photograph from and saw a proposal to buy a property. I was about to look away when something caught my eye. "Miss Jenkins," I said, not lifting my eye from the paper, "please Dear, call me Gloria. I don't like much of a miss anymore. Gloria, I thought all the property you own was in Massachusetts. She blinked at me for a while, such out of the moment question. Well, yes, dear, it is, she answered, suddenly shutting my face. Sorry, it's just I couldn't help but notice this proposal here. For a property in Louisiana? She looked lost for a second, and then I saw the memory hit her. Oh, yes, that was a property Robert was looking into. He simply arranged the Louisiana house. I'm not too sure how he even found the place, quite honestly. In fact, when he first started flying down there every other weekend, I was all about he was having an affair. But when I asked if I could come with him, he didn't put up a struggle at all. She picked up the proposal and thumbed through the pages until she found a picture and handed it to me. The house was huge and old with big columns. The frame, the front of it, and a black gated fence surrounding the yard. The windows were too dark to see through, but looked to be 2 stories, only wide enough barely to fit in the picture. It was a little run down, but I could see why Robert was interested in this house. It had potential to be absolutely gorgeous. After looking over the pictures for some time, I finally spoke. "And this house?" I began. "Are you selling this well?" "Why, no, we don't own it, doctor," she said, looking hurt by those words. Robert passed before we could finish up the paperwork. Such a shame, too, because the place was lovely. I don't know what, but my heart sank a little bit with this. But Robert visited this there often right before his death? I asked. Yes, yes, he did, Gloria responded. The funny thing is, Robert was known for closing on properties quickly, sometimes too quickly, she said with a chuckle. It was like he was afraid to finally go through with it. She watched me scrutinize the photograph of the house. "You look interested, doctor," she said, the chuckle returning as well. "Are you looking to make a move as well, or get into the real estate biz?" "Maybe," I said, trailing off. "Well, tell you what, that whole box is full of information Robert kept on the house." Scuffed a bit amongst some other paperwork. "I'm just going to share all this stuff, so if you're interested, help yourself." It took me a bit to register what she just said. "Sure, yeah," I finally managed to push it out. "That sounds great, Gloria. Thank you." I picked up the box and slowly started walking to the door. "Say, just for curiosity's sake," I started, "who was the previous owner of the house?" "Oh, well, it didn't have an owner. It was in use while we viewed it," she said. "Technically, it's owned by the Bank of Louisiana. Before that, it was a school." "A school, huh?" I asked. "Yep. If what the woman who showed us the property told us was true. It was the first all-black school in the whole state. I stood there for a moment, thinking about how bizarre this whole thing was. This was Robert looking to buy an old run-down school in Louisiana? Why this one specifically? And why wouldn't he close on the property? As I turned to leave, I heard Miss Jenkins call out from behind me. "Oh, doctor," she said, "one last thing." "Yes?" "I won't ask why, though I think I know, but if you're going to walk around on the liquor, drink gin." I was startled. "I'm sorry?" "Gin, honey," she said. "It's together to smell on someone. That's what Robert used to do." I left the office feeling out of place, as if everything that has happened was a dream. I drove straight home and immediately started roughing around Robert's paperwork. It was a tough business at first, and it wasn't to adopt identity real estate documents, so I didn't quite know what I was looking at first, but about an hour in I got the hang of it. I started the paperwork out on my drawing room table, and one pull I had all the information about the house. Turns out the thing was owned by someone incredibly wealthy family back in the early 1800s. In fact, they were once one of the first families to move down to Louisiana once we got it from the French. The date was the fall we converted the place to a school. I couldn't figure out. It looked like the bank got didn't get a hold of it until the 60s. I sat back and scratched my head. I looked at the other two piles I had made. One was about Robert, who had written out on use of painting to his house, and the other was his junk. I walked over to the junk pile and stood putting the papers back into the box, one by one. Halfway through the pile, I got to a beat-up-looking marina photo. I undid all of the crust and pulled the papers out from inside it. It thumbed through the first pages. More rental agreements for Massachusetts properties. I was about to throw them in the box when I noticed a series of numbers on the pages. 12-4-21. I pulled this paper out and studied it. It was a rental agreement for a studio apartment in Cambridge. As I looked over the paper, I realized that there was a check stub rolled to the back of it. The check read for $180,000, made payable to the Cambridge Realty Trust Company. He had paid for the property in his name for 10 years. I found this odd. Why would one of the biggest apartment owners in the state rent an apartment from someone else? I dropped the envelope to the table and heard it a click. I picked the envelope back up and found it upside down. I felt something inside down the envelope in my hand, and I found a key with unit E335 echoed engraved into it. I looked back over to the rental agreements, and sure enough, the address of the property read 375 Broadway Street, Unit E335, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Froze for half a second, then frantically searched for my coat. I couldn't tell you why I felt the urge to go see this place now, but it all just too abnormal to ignore. My instincts were telling me to go to there, and I was going to trust them. I got to the apartment fairly quick and found it up the stairs. The front door was locked, and I tried the key. The key fit snugly into the lock and turned it with ease. I felt my nerves leap. I entered the lobby and found the staircase. I ran up the stairs into a tiny unit. I researched the third floor, opened up the door, and sure enough, right in front of me was Unit E335. It felt like time froze, and I was just standing there, staring at the door. The morning I was drunk, trying to find closure, and now here I am looking through a dead man's things, walking in his footsteps. Who am I doing this for? Me? Robert? Andrew? I shook the thoughts from my head. It's my day off, I realized. I'm just taking time playing detective. I walked up to the door and slid the key into the lock and turned the doorknob. The door swung inward, and I stared into one big room. I found a light switch, flicked it on. The room was your typical studio apartment. A key, a kitchenette, and bathroom all in one big spacious area. But there was no furniture. The entire room was completely empty, walls bare except for the middle room, where sitting on the floor, facing was a safe. I walked up slowly to the safe against it. The metal was cold. I tried to move it, and it was extremely heavy. It must be thick. I stood there and looked at it, pounding the rigidity of the whole thing. Then I knocked down and accepted not to work. And create these numbers. 12, 4, 21. I heard the mechanism inside click. My head skipped a bit. Slowly, I swung the door open and passed inside. Sitting at the bottom of the safe were two books. I picked up the first one up and read the cover. The personal journal of Robert A. Jenkins. My hands were shaking. I the looked the book from Robert Jenkins' journal and studied it. The writing was in some weird language I had never seen before. I flicked open the cover and found a folded up piece of paper. Took the paper and unfolded it, and my stomach dropped. It was almost an exact copy of the picture Andrew drew for that day in my office, black and white, sitting there, staring in my very existence, was a terror monster, Ubloo. I don't know what happened first, shutting the book or getting up to leave. I don't know why but I couldn't be in this room anymore. I wasn't supposed to find these things. With the books in my arms, I ran out the apartment door without even shutting it behind me. I ran straight to my car, threw the books on the passenger seat, and drove straight home. When I got there, I grabbed the books again and sprang inside, looked over my shoulders the whole way. I got inside and slammed the door, ran into my dining room table, and there the book and threw the books down. I immediately started going through the pages of this weird language book. It was incredibly old and full of pictures. I got halfway through when I stopped on a page with a drawing that looked like a crudely drawn Ubloo. I secretly searched through the rest of the book, but I couldn't make heads or tails of the language, so I cast it aside. I then grabbed Robert's journal and opened to the first page. My name is Robert A. Jenkins, and for the past year I have been affected with paranormal encounters and my dreams by a monster I call Ubloo. I know how this might sound, but everything I wrote in here must be taken with the utmost gravity, as I fear I will not be around much longer. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This had to be a dream, some sort of fricked up dream. I looked through the next few pages and saw recordings of dreams Robert had that were absolutely horrible. Dreams of standing on the ground and watching his son jump off a 60-story building, only to splatter on the pavement right in front of him, over and over again. Dreams of walking in on his wife cheating on him with the neighbors, his son videotaping it, and then turning on Robert and beating him senselessly while his wife laughed. Dreams of parents being burned alive with the fire department laughed and lost wife. Terrible things how this man lived so long with such burden I never know. I quickly flipped through the pages. There were nothing but white. I stopped when I researched the end, and I knew Robert had died before he could fill this journal. Slowly I flipped backwards until I reached the last page, the written note. When I read the words, I dropped the book as if it were flaming hot, recorded the first steps back, starting at the floor. The damage was done. Those horrible words engraved into my mind's eye. The end is the beginning. I paced through the room a long time and heard about everything that happened. Just then I heard a noise in the kitchen. I walked in to investigate, and that felt a burning pain across the back of my skull. I dropped to the ground, face first, and my head felt like it had split. Look, baby, he is home. I heard an unfamiliar face say. I watched a pair of black boots walk up next to my face, and luckily knocked me in the forehead. walked walkily dock. From the ground I could hear a pair of boots. At the other end of my kitchen I saw another man, dressed in black, with a ski mask, holding a gun to a girl's head. "Please, Dr. A, help me, please!" I recognized the voice from somewhere. Where? "Shut up! He can't help you," I heard the other man say as his pistol rapped the girl in the side of the head. She began to cry. My vision came into focus, and then I realized who she was. She was Andrea, my receptionist. "Andrea!" I yelled, but I was then kicked in the stomach by an attacker. "Didn't you hear me, buddy?" he said. He stood over me, writing in pen. "You can't help her." He took a step back and stomped, and I felt his heavy boot come down on my kneecap and felt an exploding pain in my leg. I screamed loudly and clutched my leg, but when I did, the man only kicked me again. Was hurt even worse the second time. "Please, Dr. A, please help," said. "They said they were going to kill me," Andrew pleaded from the back of the kitchen. I said, "Shut up." I heard the deck of the pistol hitting Andrea again, and heard her sob. "That's right, baby doll," the first man said. "We're going to kill you, but first we're going to hurt you, and then we're going to have a little fun." "No, please stop." I looked up just in time to see the muzzle flash, hear Andrea scream, and then almost like an answer from a noise of screaming and gunfire, I heard it in the back of my head. "Ubloo!" I woke up in darkness and realized I had been screaming. My throat was sore and my shirt was soaked in sweat. I began to panic. I realized I was sitting in my dining room table and ran to the light switch. I flicked it on, but nothing was there. No noise, no one in the kitchen, nothing. At all once it came back to me. How could I forget falling asleep? After I saw those words in Robert's journals, I sat down and decided to go through the rental agreements again, which were all laid down in front of me. I must have fallen asleep during that, and how did I remember sitting down to do this? Then I remembered my conversation with Andrew, how Ubloo realized that he could scare him more with microchip dream than a normal one, how the ability to catch him off guard was effective. I got to catch up in this theory that I didn't realize happening. When I did, I got sick to my stomach. It couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. It wasn't even real. This isn't real. I tried to force the thought from my head, but I couldn't. I couldn't. Ubloo is controlling my dreams now. I vomited on my dining room floor. That was all happening too fast. I looked around the room frantically. I had to pick. I needed to get out of here. Maybe if I ran, he'll have to chase me. It's worth a shot. I ran back to my bedroom and began gathering my things. I ran over to my briefcase and pulled out a prescription pad. I was definitely going to need this. I began packing in a frenzy before I realized I didn't know where I was going, but then it hit me. Louisiana. I'm going to fly to Louisiana. I packed most of my things with this being the idea, but I began to feel queasy thinking about it. I couldn't bring myself to admit I was going to this place to continue Robert's work. I couldn't yet. I just didn't know enough. I'll drive. I'll stay in hotels along the way to do research, edit the Royal Journal, figure out what this other book says, research the house Robert wanted to buy. I had to do too much work to fly to Louisiana. I had to learn, I had to study everything Robert wrote down. And he knew if I was going to have a chance getting rid of Ubloo. 6 weeks later, I pulled out my bag behind me as I approached the checkout counter. Leaving us soon, Mr. Abaden, the girl behind the counter said to me. Yes, sorry, but I need to get back on the road now, I said with a smile. Well, it was a pleasure having you. I always feel safer working here when a doctor stays with us. She smiled back. I said my goodbyes and headed for the door. I checked my watch, 7:01 a.m. Perfect. I'll be in Mississippi by the evening. Then I'll be able to find a place, hopefully meet up with Eli if he was willing to be up that late. I began to look up from my watch. It was great to finally know that the book's sign an instant wood a corner of blinding stared at me from around the corner with a gray head with shiny skin, two black empty eyes as the bottom of the head was a long snout, dangled and wrapped with his head and pulled it back. I stood there frozen, with my bag in my hand. I stood there and I waited. I waited to wake up, but I didn't.